All right, folks, welcome to a long time. It's been a long time since we all got back together here. I don't even remember the last time we actually did a show. That's how far back I'm thinking, but that'll have been like early this year, maybe very early, maybe, or I don't know. But
It's been
anyhow,
a while. It's been so long that the first time we did this show, there was actually original members in some bands, but now nothing.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
All right, so of course, with me is Mr. Tom Jennings and Mr. David Hens here. We're going to discuss bands and what seems to be going on. It seems like more and more bands are falling under the umbrella of losing members and continuing on without original members, and it's something we've seen. At the Foreigner thing, we've seen go way back. We knew this was going to eventually come to fruition, but it seems like once Kelly Hansen left, and now Mick Jones doesn't get out at all anymore to play. He can't play anymore. So it's a whole different thing out there now. So what do you think, Tom? What's your take on all this whole thing that we saw coming, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to pan out here?
Well, I mean, I guess the impetus of this conversation is probably the fact that Leonard Skinner and Foreigner are going out on a tour, a double bill tour. And a lot of people mention, rightfully so, that these are two bands that don't have any original members whatsoever. And when we say original, I think there are periods where bands don't necessarily have original members, but they have members with a long history with the band. The one that kind of rises to the top of my mind is Yes. If they've got at least two guys that appeared on some of the recordings, Steve Howe, who's a very important part of their legacy, and then Jeff Downs, who's a part of their legacy as well. So there's that connection. And in their case too, the bass player, Chris Squire, I mean, he passed away, so he was replaced by Billy Sherwood, who had also appeared on some of the recordings. Now, in the case of Leonard Skinner and Foreigner, what I found interesting is I looked at it and contemplated it. Is I don't I'm pretty sure that between the two bands, they're going to be playing full sets of songs that none of them appeared on the original recordings, which is to me is it's interesting. It's interesting to put it mildly. I mean, you feel conflicted about it to a certain degree, but really at the end of the day, what matters is whether the public accepts it. And obviously, the public does accept it because they're able to go on a tour like this, use the name, and perform the songs under the same name. And it always kind of cracks me up when I think it was Burton Cummings, who when he sued recently to get back the name of the Guess Who, he said that the reason he got so irritated was because somebody brought a Guess Who record backstage and it was signed by the current members of the Guess Who, none of whom had appeared on that actual record. So I don't know. It is what it is. We'll discuss it a little bit more, but I think that the Leonard Skinner Foreigner tour is really the one that kind of you kind of look at and you go, yeah, this is it, man. I mean, a band truly can completely outlive all of its members and still be a touring juggernaut, which I don't know. I never thought it would be possible, but here we are.
Especially headlining Sheds. I find that kind of hard to believe. I mean, I'm not sure on the prices they're charging.
Oh,
I don't
it's a
know. If,
lot. I just did
yeah,
a piece for the Niagara Gazette, and the tickets, they're typical front row VIPs like $2,000. I mean, it's
yeah.
you're getting the closer ones are $300 to $500, and people are paying. I mean, the buying public has become accustomed to these. I mean, we could have a whole nother discussion about just these absurd ticket prices. And I don't know, maybe I just didn't invest my money wisely or pick a better career. But I see some of these tickets and I go, man, I could not do two or three concerts a year at 350 $400 a ticket. But there's a core demographic that kind of just is like, well, yeah, that's how much it costs for a ticket.
So, David, what was your take when you saw this Foreigner Skinner tour coming up, and what's your take on the whole thing there?
Well, when I first saw the tour announced, I was kind of like reading the comments on various social media outlets to trying to gauge what people thought. And I mean, a lot of people were like they're vocally against it on social media, but in the end, I mean, the tickets will definitely sell. I think. I mean, both of those bands have such a deep catalog of hits, and the music is just ingrained in like classic rock radio in a big way. So, and just from my personal experience, I mean, we're serious music people, but a lot of the casual fans I talk to, they don't really care. They just go to hear the music and just have a good time. So, I mean, I care, but I mean, the thing with Leonard Skinner is, I mean, after the plane crash anyway, I mean, you could never recreate that chemistry to begin with. So, I mean, they're like even the replacement members they've had, a lot of those guys have passed away now too. So, and like I think Gary Rossington was the last one left from what until now he's gone. So, I mean, they like I've seen them live recently, and they still put on a really good show. It's highly entertaining. I mean, Ricky Medlock's a great guitar player. He's been in the band a while, and they do the music justice. But I mean, I think even like people who I know like people from my family, I've talked to this about them before, just trying to gauge to see what they think. And I mean, a lot of even like my parents, like they love Leonard Skinner. They saw him in the past, but I think even they wouldn't really be able to tell you who was in the band. They were just more of like the casual music fan. Like they didn't really study the lineups like that. So I mean, I don't know. A lot of people just don't care. They just go for the party, and I think that's why you see a lot of these package tours still drawing pretty heavily. So, and I was even reading an article earlier today about Steve Lukather. He was talking about people giving him crap for bringing Toto back out on the road because he's the only one from the original lineup still left, and I mean, he obviously he puts on a great show. He does the music justice. I mean, Joseph Williams, the singer, he's been there for almost 40 years now anyway.
Mhm.
But I mean, and once like Jeff Porcaro died like 30 something years ago, I mean, that people didn't think they should have continued on after that. But yeah, I think a lot of those bands, I mean, he wants to keep the music alive and he's still healthy enough to play it. So a guy like Lukather is going to go out and, I mean, it's not like he's replacing guys with like people who can't play or aren't going to do the music justice. I mean, I don't think he's diminishing the legacy in any way. And I don't really think, I mean, Foreigner, I mean, unfortunately, I never got to see Foreigner in the original incarnation because I'm too young. But, you know, I mean, I've seen them without Lou Graham and they were good. And I mean, Kelly was in the band a long time and he did a great job. But, you know, in the end, I think just people want to hear the music. So it doesn't really matter who's playing it in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard the tour announced, it didn't really phase me except for the fact I can't really see Foreigner would not have been able to go out as a main headliner. I don't think on a Live Nation Shed tour. I just think with the new singer now and Kelly not being there,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more flack going on, like you said, with the social media and people who do. You see all the comments, like you said. Um, I got to see Mr. Maldonado sing a couple songs when they played at the Erie County Fair this year. He did two songs with them. Kind of, I guess they were kind of like slowly breaking him in. So he did a couple songs, give Kelly a little bit of a break on his final Buffalo appearance there at the Erie County Fair. And, I mean, once again, you got a different voice in there. You're never going to have everybody to have the same exact voice. Um, does he do the songs justice? Well, the two songs that I heard him sing, yeah, I thought he was all right. I mean, it wasn't bad or anything like that. But Kelly Hansen was there since what, 2005?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking 20 years of Kelly Hansen. And yeah, he did a great job with that catalog. He did not sound like Lou Graham, but he always had the phrasing and he always kept the songs, sang them with integrity, you know, and that's something I like. Now this guy here, who knows, he's doing the full set now and he's doing the whole show. It's just weird how they brought him kind of out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden here he is taking over on vocals. That was kind of a little bit surprising there because he was in Train, if you remember, for a while, but he never really did anything vocally, really, maybe backgrounds, but that's about it. What's your take when you saw that when Kelly was leaving, Tom, and that they brought this guy in as a guitar player? Now all of a sudden he's taken over as a vocalist.
Yeah. Well, Foreigner's an interesting case for me because I grew up in Rochester, and Rochester is
Yep.
the home of Lou Graham, and I think that as a testament to the sentimentality of Lou Gramm and Foreigner, Foreigner has not played Rochester since Lou Gramm left. They've played surrounding areas, but that's the one market they just don't play because of a certain loyalty towards Lou. So, and that being said, I've interviewed Kelly Hansen a couple of times. I've seen Foreigner, I've seen Lou solo, all that kind of stuff. And it brings up a lot of issues. Lou's case, he left the band because of health issues, and we could say the same thing about John Anderson. And then Anderson recovered, certainly Dennis DeYoung, and then Dennis DeYoung recovers. But a lot of times it's so they bring these people in, and they're like David, I think, alluded to, maybe the music writer in us. We just think we're a little bit smarter than everybody else, and go, oh well, this certainly no one will accept this. But I think the core fan does not care. As I was kind of contemplating doing an article about this for the newspaper, the thing that came to mind would be like a corner bar. You go to a corner bar and your favorite bartender is there, and you go there every Friday night with your friends, and then that bartender leaves and another bartender takes over. You still go to the bar, just because it's not the same bartender, and it feels a little different for a little while, but eventually, you sort of become accustomed to the new bartender. So is it the bar or is it the bartender? And I think in the case of bands like Leonard Skinner and Foreigner and some of these arena rock era bands, it's more of the name and the songs than it is the members. And I'm still trying to figure out which was the first band to really pull it off successfully. Chicago did it when Peter Cetera left. It was like, oh my God, Peter Cetera's leaving. You're never gonna be able to pull it off. To some degree, Genesis, when Peter Gabriel leaves, you get all these. You get some singers that leave, but I mean, like in Chicago's case, they brought in a guy that sounded like the original lead singer, whereas like Black Sabbath brought in Ronnie James Dio for Ozzy. Van Halen brings in Sammy Hagar for David Lee Roth. So, but it feels like the bands that decided to replace their players with people that were similar players fared better than bands that tried to reinvent themselves along the way, if that makes sense. And I think that's been the case with both Foreigner and David. In 1987, that Leonard Skinner tribute act that formed together literally just for a 10th anniversary concert. It was never intended to be a long-term project. There were still 5 out of 7 surviving Skynyrd members. 5 out of 7. I mean, really, the members that died in the crash were, you had the guitarist who Steve Gaines hadn't even been in the band that long. He wasn't even on all their records, and the lead singer. I mean, it wasn't like a band that lost that many people. And if you even go back a little further, I just did a Buddy Holly tribute show with my kids, and in doing some research on that, Buddy Holly dies in a plane crash. They replaced him on the next show. Like the night of the plane crash, they had already had somebody in place, so people were still going to the show the next night after Buddy Holly died. So I think in the case of Skynyrd, there was a little bit of reaction, but they proved that they could go on with somebody that was a sound-alike. Maybe again inspired by Chicago or whatever. We've seen Journey do it. We've seen Styx do it. I mean, all these bands that bring in and Foreigner is now on their second sound-alike. You know what I'm saying? And when I say sound-alike, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to get close enough that the fans will accept it as a good representation. I feel like it has to be good enough for you to be maybe intoxicated or high and still sing it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. In fact, I'll close with this because I'm getting a little too chatty, but I remember being in a bar band with a friend of mine, and I was the lead singer, and he was like, man, we got to sound like the record. We got to sound like the record. I'm like, no, we just got to sound good enough for people to recognize the song and sing along. And that's all it is. Like, if they want to listen to the record, they'll play the record at home. When they're out with their friends, they just want to they want to recognize the songs. They want to be able to sing along with them. Think about Leonard Skinner and Foreigner. Is there going to be any song in either of that set list that somebody won't know the words to?
And that's the sad part, because even, Foreigner made the one album with Kelly Hansen, and they would very rarely play much off of that album. When it first came out, they maybe did 2 songs in concert. As years went on, they went back to all Lou Gramm songs in the set. And Foreigner actually is on the 4th singer, if you remember. Johnny Edwards come in there and did a album with them, if you remember, in
Yeah,
between.
but he wasn't really a replacement singer. I mean, he did a record with them.
Well,
And
he
again,
replaced
they
Lou
tried to,
Graham.
yeah, but they tried to reinvent themselves, a la Dio replacement van. I mean, Johnny Edwards didn't fit because he didn't sound enough like Lou Graham.
But had that album they recorded with him did something, maybe they would have carried on, made a couple more albums with him. Who knows?
Well, look at
We
Bad
don't
Company.
know.
Look at Bad Company with Brian Howe. I mean,
Yeah.
they still were able to go out and do a few, the heritage Bad Company stuff. But I mean, totally different band. And then when
Yeah.
Bad Company gets inducted into the Rock Hall, Brian Howe is not even in the discussion, which I think is a sin. But whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother subject of Rock Hall. We can have 20 episodes on that thing, and I don't know if it would help any. So, what other bands? The one thing I've noticed too, real quick, is that a lot of the bands that were big in the 90s and the 2000s already are all on replacement members. Like the only guy left in a lot of these bands is the singer. You got Puddle of Mudd with Wes Scantlin, the only one left, and then
Yeah.
live, you just got, Mr. Kowalchuk there. So many of these band Buck Cherry, you only got Josh Todd now, really, from the original lineup. It's like I just don't understand, and it's already happened with the bands who haven't even been around nowhere near as long as some of these bands. So I guess they were already thinking ahead of the game, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, look how hard Jeff Tate fought for the name Queensryche because he knows the value in it.
Yeah. Yeah, he went out and put on a great show couple weeks ago there. Some guys are, you know, some guys can still have a successful career even without the name. It just all depends. So, what did you want to add to the conversation, David? You got something to bring up about the your take on some of this stuff here?
Yeah, I like within the example of live. I mean, Ed Kowalczyk wrote most of the lyrics, and he was like the primary creative force in the band anyway. So I think that makes a difference. I mean, because he was able to. I mean, plus, when I think about live, I mean, I remember I saw live at the Rock on the Range in Columbus, Ohio, 2017, and it was the original lineup. It was the first time they had played together in like 8 years,
Hmm.
but obviously the reunion didn't last. And the thing about that band is, I don't think any of the other guys in the band, other than him, really had any like public personality. So if he replaced them, I mean, I don't think anybody was going to really know the difference anyway. They hadn't really asserted themselves as like recognizable people. Other than, I mean, he was the face of the band. So I think they were. It was. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish their contributions to the music, but from a public perspective, I don't think anybody really knew the difference.
That's a valid point. Yeah.
Yeah, Train's the same way. I mean, it's just Pat Monahan at this point. There's nothing. Mm-hmm. There's no other connection to. I mean, there's no real band. I mean, it's weird because I mean, we all know the Beatles, right? I mean, the Beatles kind of were the first ones that created this whole idea of four guys getting together and creating a band and making music in a garage and then becoming famous. And I mean, those four people were recognizable. They were each celebrities in their own right. They all had unique contributions to the band sound and in many ways irreplaceable. But I mean, I often wondered, like, if post Lennon's death, if the three surviving members went out as the Beatles with anybody as the fourth player, if people would have accepted it. And now I kind of think they would have. I mean, it's weird. and I mean, look at the Eagles. To me, the Eagles is like, wow, you got the Eagles are two guys, like the Who's two guys. It's Townsend and Daltrey. Well, could the Who go out without either Townsend or Daltrey?
No.
You'd almost think they couldn't, but then look at the Eagles. Who would have thought the Eagles could have gone out without Glenn Frey? But they just, I mean, they didn't skip a beat. I mean, they didn't even put the dirt on top of the grave before they had dates scheduled. So I don't know. I think I think these bands have just become more like maybe a Philharmonic orchestra or whatever, where, it's players, they're playing a certain type of music, what you're getting. It doesn't necessarily matter who the players are. You trust that they're going to perform the songs very well. And they do. I mean, you can't say that these Lynyrd Skynyrd or Foreigner don't perform these songs at a high level. And they're certainly not like comparable to a tribute band that you're going to catch at a 1,000-seat venue in, North Tonawanda or whatever. But it I don't know. It's fascinating. But the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I mean, Glenn Miller's the leader of the Glenn Miller Orchestra. He dies in a plane crash in World War II. They're still playing out. So it's the name has value. And I think if you manage the name and you manage reputation, and maybe, David, I'll have you weigh in on this too. I feel like it also probably depends on the number of hits that you have to be able to pull it off as well. And again, Leonard Skinner and Foreigner's catalog is so deep. Like they're just so they're both jukeboxes. There's no filler. So it doesn't necessarily matter who's playing it. It's every great, and look at a band starting out, a young band. If they're smart, they'll encore with what? A recognizable hit that everybody will sing along with. That's not theirs. I'm just listening to an OAR album the other day, and they're playing Tears for Fears, and they did a great, and I love the Tears for Fears song that OAR is playing, and you can do, and if the song is good enough, it doesn't matter who's playing it. And if you can actually get the name and play all the songs, of course you're going to sell tickets. And that's what people are paying for, is David, I think you said, is the experience. They're not paying for members. They're paying for the ability to get the t-shirt, to go to work the next day and say, man, I went to such and such a concert, and to kind of relive their youth. That's it.
You made a point earlier when you mentioned about how the Guess Who and Burton Cummings there, he saw an album where all these people were signing it that had never even played on it. I'm wondering why artists would do that. I mean, if I didn't play on an album or at least tour on that album, I wouldn't even sign it. Why? It makes no sense to, really.
If I remember the interaction correctly, it was just a fan that was just being annoying and just wanted the record signed. So I think that, and I've had, man, actually it's funny. I remember I was going to get Todd Rundgren's Utopia album signed, and I gave it to Gil Assayas, and Gil says to me, looks at it, he goes, he's keyboardist in Todd Rundgren's band currently and was on the Utopia reunion tour. He's like, I wasn't on that record. I won't sign it. And I'm like, Gil, your picture's right on the front, bro. He's like, oh my God, I didn't even know this record existed. So there are artists that won't sign things that they're not on, but I could see if you're in a meet and greet, and who knows, management may just say, hey, look, these guys are drunk. They're paying $500 for meet and greet. If they shove an album in front of your face, just sign the damn thing. That's what I'm assuming is happening. And clearly they don't care or know, because otherwise they wouldn't put the album in front of the person to sign it,
Yeah, a lot of people don't know any better, and they bring it with them because they want, just like you said, they want it signed one way or the other. But yeah, it's just a shame how it's, But I think another thing too, you see a lot of comments, rude comments, oh, they're just a tribute band or whatever. But you got to look at it this way: Foreigner 1985, Foreigner 2025. It's just who's in the band at that time. So how can you take knock the band when all they're doing is they got a lineup, they got a band lineup. That's who's in the band now. For one reason or another, for better or for worse, that's the way it is. And like you said, if they don't like it, then don't buy a ticket. Don't go. But to rip them and call them a tribute band, cover band, just because there's no original members, that's just somebody who really doesn't get it, really.
Well, I don't think there's anything. I guess that, to my opinion, is they are tribute bands, they are cover bands. I mean, no matter how you slice it and dice it, but is that such a bad thing? I mean, it's a testament to the power of the catalog of the songs. That's all. They're keeping, as I think Lou Gramm has kind of warmed up to the whole Foreigner thing, because he realizes that you get one of two choices: either the band splits up, they become irrelevant and probably don't sell much merch or are part of the public consciousness, or somebody goes out there and continues to promote your work that you wrote, that you appeared on, and fans can still enjoy it. That's that's a tribute, and to me, tribute is positive. If you have enough songs that somebody else could play them and they sound great, you know, is the BPO a tribute band? Yeah, I guess to some degree. I mean, if they're playing Tchaikovsky, he's not around anymore, but you know what I'm saying. But those classical pieces are enduring. The song "Amazing Grace" still enduring. These classic rock bands have catalogs that are enduring, and the positive spin on it is that somebody is still out there keeping that name in the stratosphere, whether it's social media or in the venues and all that other stuff. And there may just be a 15-year-old kid that would have never heard Sweet Home Alabama. And I say this from personal experience because I'm a high school teacher, and I have a young African American kid, 14 years old, who doesn't fit the Leonard Skinner demographic, who loves that song because it's still out there. You know what I mean? And we don't have any more real, at least from my era, because I think Joey and I are older than David, but a lot of these bands, there's no successors to them. That's part of the issue too, is that there's nobody behind him that is putting out the type of songs or putting out the quantity and quality of material that Foreigner and Leonard Skinner did during the peak of their commercial viability that could do what these bands were doing. It's people aren't as accepting of new music as maybe they were in the 70s and 80s. I mean, these guys, Leonard Skinner, what's the last song they're going to play? Sweet Home Alabama. What's the song they're going to encore with? Freebird. I mean, you know what you're getting. People are still going because they love those songs, but those are timeless songs. Is Foreigner going to play "I Want to Know What Love Is" with a big chorus? Well, sure. And they've been doing this for 30 years. It's I guess I could almost I think George Thorogood used the Applebee's analogy. Like there's a point in your career where you become Applebee's. You're consistent. Maybe it's not the greatest thing you're ever going to see, the most inspiring performance you're ever going to see, but it ain't going to be bad. You're going to get something good. You're going to have a decent experience. By the way, Applebee's, if you want to sponsor any of my programs, let me know.
But I think you're right. I think Lou Gramm is probably warmed up to the idea more now, not only because he's played with the band, quite a few shows over the past couple of years, even though he only comes out for like the final encores or whatever. He's got to remember that's pushing his royalty checks there, man. I mean, if the band's not out there performing, you're not going to be selling as many albums.
Well, I hope it's bigger than royalty checks. I mean, it's the legacy.
Well, what I'm saying, Well, at first he used to take a swipe at it, but I mean, he used to be more not open to it. But, I think over time, things changed, like you said. And, Foreigners had a lot of.
Because Lou understands the business. And Lou is mad at Mick. I don't think Lou is mad at Kelly. And if half of what Lou said about what went down with Mick Jones is correct, he had every right to be mad at him. He got screwed out of royalties. And, when I truly believe, even in the case of like Yes and Styx, I think it feels gross when you just replace somebody because they're sick. It just kind of I mean, if you're a decent human being, it's got to feel a little gross, I mean, I would hate it if at my job, I couldn't work for 3 months and then they're just like, yeah, sorry, Tom, we're just going to hire somebody else. I mean, in most situations, that's not even legal. But so that's where that personal thing comes in. And again, Burton Cummings, he same thing. It was very personal to him. He doesn't want somebody signing his record because that's his record. Okay. And if you're going to sing my songs, you're going to sing it with my permission. You're not going to go out and steal the name and capitalize on it. And that's what happened to him. So that's the difference between, let's say, you and I, who we don't necessarily have any skin in the game, and these guys where it's not necessarily about the whole idea of a band going on performing their songs without them. It's because of all the crap that happened behind the scenes.
Yeah. Any last things to add on the subject, David?
I don't know. I my personal feeling, I've always been more Like I've always find it more respectable if a band, like if they're going to make new albums with replacement members, like at least they're like contributing something to the catalog. Because I think I mean, for the casual fan, they just want to hear the music. But my personal feelings, like what you mentioned, Queensryche. I mean, the thing about Queensryche is they had such an acrimonious split that there was I don't think they're probably ever going to get back together. But I mean, even with Chris DeGarmo's not there anyway, so I mean, you were already down a member from the original lineup to begin with. But I mean, like the thing about Queensryche is the last few albums they made with Tate were not good, and people got sick of they just wanted to hear the old stuff. And like people were the complaints that people had about Queensryche, like with albums like American Soldier and Dedicated to Chaos and stuff like that. I mean, they're not up to the Queensryche standard of the previous decades, but the last few albums they made with Todd La Torre, that's like the Queensryche that people wanted to hear all along. But like that had they been making that music with Jeff Tate, they probably would have never gotten to the point that they couldn't reconcile. But I mean, so I think if people like fans who are like classic fans of the band and want to hear that sound again, they're doing themselves a disservice if they don't seek out the new material. Because I mean, Todd sings the Jeff stuff really well, but the albums they made like within the last 10 years have also been really solid. So
think a lot of that too really comes down to when you're a new band nowadays. I mean, you really when you get signed, you really got to make sure, you know, to be represented properly. Because you got to remember with Queensryche, it got to the point where Jeff Tate and his wife were basically running everything, the touring end of the business and this and that.
yeah,
And Wilton and them, all those guys got all aggravated because it's like they weren't even playing on the albums,
mm-hmm.
even though their name was on there. It just got that bad, like you said. And all of a sudden everything just blew up.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
you also had the personal element because if I remember
Yeah,
correctly, what was it? The guitarist married the daughter, Jeff Tate's daughter, something like that. So you
Yeah,
got you got all
Parker.
that stuff. But I mean, again, that goes back to the reason that Queensryche split. It's a combination of factors, but at some point, it becomes a game of chicken. Like, can you survive without me? And unfortunately, if that's the way you feel, you're probably going to get replaced. I mean, it's it's sad because I think again, as human beings, we don't like to think of the idea that we are all so replaceable. But at the end of the day, we are. And so when you're in it, you should probably just enjoy it. And then again, if somebody else if they do it honorably and pick up the torch and continue to trumpet the legacy, that's great. I mean, look, and again, and we go back a very rare example, Led Zeppelin. How many opportunities did they have to just go? I mean, they only lost the drummer. And when I say only, I mean, it's of all the positions to replace. I mean, I didn't think Rush could go out without Neil, but now they're doing it. So you can go out without these people, but those guys felt so their legacy was so important to them and so close to their heart, at least to Plant. I don't know that Page necessarily or John Paul Jones as much that they just, well, I guess it had to be for those guys. Cause I mean, technically could Led Zeppelin have gone out without Robert Plant? Probably. I
Well,
mean, it's just, I mean, Queen went out without Freddie Mercury. I mean, look at all these bands that you would have the conversation before they did anything, and you go, oh no, you can't.
it just
Queen
depends
Queen
on,
Queen can't go out without
yeah.
Freddie Mercury.
But it's
But
not like Mercury left. Obviously, that situation was a little bit different. Robert Plant's still around, so to try to replace, a guy that's alive of that caliber is a totally different matter as opposed to replace. Queen just those guys just wanted to, and there was only the two of them, Roger Taylor and Brian May, because you got to
yeah,
remember Deacon left a long time ago. They just wanted to go out and play the music of Queen. So of
mm-hmm.
course, they got Paul Rogers the first time, and then they got Adam Lambert, and that's a whole different thing because they bill it a little differently too. It wasn't just called Queen; it was called Paul Rogers and Queen. It was called Adam Lambert and Queen. So it's not just like it's all about how you do it, though, Tom. Like you said, there's an elegant way to do it, a correct way to do it, and then there's the wrong way to do it, which
Yeah.
you see that a lot with some of these bands, you know. But like you said, they need that name,
Yeah,
for
it's the business aspect of it that also
yeah.
drives a lot of that. Because again, John Fogerty probably could have gone out as CCR years ago if the original contract wasn't divvied up into four equal pieces. Because an idealistic young man is like, well, even though I'm writing all the songs, you know, we'll do this four ways. Same with the Beatles, Lennon and McCartney. Even though there were songs that Lennon wrote, songs that McCartney wrote, they're like, oh, let's be altruistic because we're young and idealistic, and God knows neither partner will screw over the other partner. But again, that was the Beatles split up because of the business decisions that were surrounding it. And then REO, look what just happened to them. I mean, you got to they get all these guys out of the band who clearly must have signed away their business interests, but then the last two kind of hung out and said, "Yeah, I ain't doing that. I may not be out on the road with them, but I'm still gonna keep my 1/3 a stake in the band. So they at least have to listen to whatever decisions that I make." And then, of course, the band couldn't go on. So it's driven by demand, driven by all the other stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, to wrap it up with a neat little bow, it's business. That's all it is. It's money. It's business. It's all about the money.
Anyway, I saw like Motley Crue is doing a tour next summer for the 20th anniversary of the Carnival of Sins tour, and obviously we know that the split with Mick Mars wasn't amicable either. So, but they're still going to do it, and people are going to go see it. So,
yeah, the band
Yeah,
that
I hope.
famously signed their contract and we will never
yeah,
reform again, and then they're like, well,
Well, I
should
just
I?
hope they make it through that tour. That's a whole different situation. Vince just had a series of strokes
yeah,
last year around this time, and it took him a long time to be able to get back out on the road again.
Yeah.
And you could tell he's not. I mean, I saw him in August. He was on that Brett Michaels package with it was Brett Michaels, Vince Neil, and Stephen Pearcy. And I thought Vince sounded better than he has in years, solo wise. I thought he was really good, but you could tell something, you know, like the doctors were telling him he probably will never go up on stage again. There he is up on stage.
hmm
No, but to do a grueling summer tour in the heat and all those places, 40 dates, and
yeah.
you've only been coming off these strokes for a little while, I don't know. I think Motley pushing the envelope is a little too much there with that one. I hope I'm wrong because I don't want to see anything happen to Vince. As bad as people, always bash his singing and this and that and everything else, he's still a human being. And I just I think he got coerced into doing this tour. I really do. And I just don't think personally, I don't think he should be out there doing that many dates in a row like that. I think they should have gone out and like done 10 dates, 15 maybe, and then breaking it up a little bit. You just don't go out on a 40 day. You know how much is involved, how hard it is to tour these days,
Yeah.
especially when you're older.
Well, I'm
Vince,
sure he's gonna have a pretty good diet and consultants and
yeah,
all that other stuff. But I mean,
still.
like we've said 1,000 times earlier in this, he's replaceable. There's somebody
Oh
that could
yeah.
take his spot.
Yeah.
You could book the tour and shove somebody in that's if you pick the right person, you could still pull it off.
Makes
Yeah, I
you
mean,
wonder.
Vince's singing has taken such a beating on social media and like the
Yeah.
music journalism and magazines over the last like 10 years or so that I think if anybody was going to be replaced out of that band, I think people would rather see Mick stay and Vince go. But
Well, Vince was replaced once.
yeah, and
But
that's a great
not with
album
a
too.
sound alike, right? I mean, the guy that
No.
replaced him didn't sound
Yeah,
anything like him.
no,
They tried to do the Dio Hagar route, which
yeah,
is a risk reward. Yes, you can establish it'll help you in terms of presenting new material and recording a new album, but it's harder when you're dealing with the heritage stuff. And Dio resented singing Iron Man just as much as Sammy Hagar didn't want to sing Jump.
Yeah. Oh
These
yeah.
they were both guys who were established by the time they came into the band. So, but I mean, even going to the quality of a person singing. I mean, there's plenty of artists that can't sing that well. But I also think the problem is, especially after seeing Paul McCartney, it just reinforced me because it's happened twice where if you look at the videos online and you listen to them, they sound pretty bad. But when you're there, it's like, doesn't sound that bad. And I don't know if that's because of a combination of people singing in the venue and maybe a little more reverb, or maybe it's just, the compression with a smaller screen. But it's weird. Like, to me, it's, I don't know. You were at that show, David. I didn't.
Yeah, it
There
was.
wasn't there wasn't a point at the Paul McCartney show where I really was like, oh wow, man, his vocals have really deteriorated. Where
Yeah,
I even saw some of the footage on Facebook later, and I go, wow, that's not how I remember him sounding live. So I think that's a bit of a part of it too, is that these handheld phone videos are so compressed that they just take whatever limitations that an artist has and just really exacerbate them.
Yeah, I tried to avoid any YouTube videos before that show just because I wanted to go in fresh. But I thought he did pretty well. I mean, he's
Yeah.
83, he's been through a lot, and there wasn't really a moment where I felt like it wasn't worth like the money he was charging. It was one of the great concert experiences I've ever had. So
Yeah, no, I mean but that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
But like you watch videos from that very show that you attended, and you will
yeah,
see what I'm saying in terms of just how bad. And Lou Graham is the same way. Like I've seen videos of Lou Graham, and I'm like, wow, he sounds pretty bad. And and then I'll see him in concert. I'll be like, this is not the same guy that I saw in a video. So I think a lot of it really is that kind of, the people griping on social media. It's because they're not going. Hey, let's put it out there, folks. A lot of the people that complain about a band on social media never bought their records, don't go to their shows, don't do anything to support the band, and they just like to bitch. So
yeah,
that's it. It's one thing. It's one thing if you're, like if I'm a big fan of, whoever, the Beatles, I'm invested in the Beatles. Like I've bought their records, I've followed their career, I'm part, but they mean something to me. Unfortunately, the nature of social media, there are people that just like to talk crap no matter what. I mean, look at the Buffalo Bills. It doesn't matter who they draft, who they sign, how many games. Man, the second they lose a game, they sound like they are playing Pop Warner football for some people. And I guarantee these are people that probably don't even own a Buffalo Bills hat, much less go to the games.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. And that's a good place to leave it off here on it. So that was our take. Everybody got to say pretty much exactly what they wanted to regarding the whole situation here, and do a few more shows like this down the road. Not that particular subject. We'll do some other things here, and
we'll let David talk next time.
oh, geez.
I hear Cretin in the background. He's going like, Jesus, is Hens ever gonna talk?
We'll have to have Cretin on with us.
Yeah,
too.
Cretin's more of a, I don't do the Long Island accent well for Cretin, but
Well, he'll be happy that you mentioned him, so that'll be good.
Happy Thanksgiving, Cretin. I know just probably get this after Thanksgiving. Yeah, great guy.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming in and stopping by, and we'll do this again very soon. Have a great Thanksgiving.
yeah, you too.